Tonight's episode of the Masonic Roundtable, friends at Masonic Revival. John, you use a lot of Edgar's stuff. Why don't you tell us a little bit about all this awesome stuff he does with Masonic Revival?
Why don't I? Yeah, no. There's a variety of things I like from him, from his pins to his neckties to his regalia. You know, this guy's got it all covered. So for a guy who just likes to wear something contemporary, but not too flashy, not too bold, but something that has some style, some elegance, and something for the modern gentleman, I think you'll find something you're looking for if you go check out Masonic Revival. So thank you, Edgar, for doing what you do and making us look good. It's a hard task. It really is.
Yes, we've all got faces for radio, and we thank Edgar very much that his apparel gives the viewers something to distract themselves from our ugly mugs. But it's interesting. We've been working with Edgar for over 4 years now, and
wow,
yeah, and it's a point of personal pride that he sells bow ties mainly because I asked him to, and helped him kind of design a couple of his early ties. So
if you don't like bow ties, it's Jason.
What?
If you don't like bow ties, it's your fault.
Yes. But if you're interested at all, especially with Christmas coming up, go to www.masonicrevival.com and get some great stuff for that Mason in your life, because Edgar does some really quality work. Isn't it time for a Masonic Revival?
Well, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to the Facebook event page or in the chat running alongside this YouTube video. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia, and I hit the wrong button and lost my video. So you're going to have to bear with me for that. But anyway, great part of a live show is we get to go to the next guy. I've got the face for radio tonight. Let's move over to Robert. Robert Johnson, say hi. How you doing?
Hi, how you doing?
All right.
Robert Johnson, past master, Waukegan Lodge number 78, current sitting secretary of Space Novum Lodge, UD.
With the bow tie, rocking the bow tie.
Yeah, I got one of Edgar's on tonight.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Totally planned, I swear.
It was not planned at all. I had it on all day, I swear.
It's our secret.
I really did.
Juan, how's it going down there in Florida?
Feels real good down here in Florida, finally. We're in the freezing temperatures of 60s and 50s, so your prayers are welcome.
I hope you survive.
I know we lost half the audience there. Juan Sepulveda here from the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast, and a brother from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny and chilly Kissimmee, Florida.
Cool, not chilly. Cool.
It's relative.
Everything's relative. And last but not least, for tonight, Jason Richards. Hi, Jason.
Let me try that again. Hi, good evening. Crazy mute button. Anyway, my name is Jason Richards, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C. And happy to be here.
Alrighty. You operate a mute button like I operate a camera button. So, let's see. I want to first thank everyone for tuning in and checking out our new date and time, as well as for all of our patrons who've been supporting the show. It's been really great. We've got a lot of good things planned due to your donations. So thank you very much in advance, and stay tuned for some of the new little perks that we've added in for all of you. So thanks again for keeping us going. Let's talk about light. Let there be light. We wanted to talk about a show that focused on the solstice. This was actually Hammy's idea, who will hopefully be joining us soon. He says, why don't we do something about the solstice and, St. John and all that, and what could we do to be fitting of the season now that we're recording this live on December 6th, 2018? And I said, well, something that I had to go back and search. Did we ever do an episode on Masonic light? So what does that have to do with the solstice? Well, solstice being in the winter solstice, one of the darkest days of the year, the concept of light in various religions and various mystery schools and how it applies to ritualistic mystery schools such as Freemasonry do have some thematic elements that could be discussed, with an exchange of ideas in a forum such as this. So I thought we could probably expand that to talk about what do we feel light is in a modern Masonic sense, and how it applies to not only our personal endeavors to seek light, but how it applies to the solstice holidays as well. So doing a little bit of research just to kind of get the pot stirred, I looked up different Masonic encyclopedias and Morals and Dogma, and tried to see what some of the themes were coming out of some of the ancient texts, as it were, of Freemasonry. And a lot of them do reference, let's see, if you look up like Mackey talks a lot about the ancient Egyptian origin of how the priests of Egypt adopted the hare, surprisingly, the rabbit, as the symbol of the moral illumination revealed to the neophytes, because they would say they would never close their eyes. So the hieroglyphic of the hare was always an open eye, which eventually got adopted into the Eye of Horus, right, later on. But then also kind of evolved into the Hebrew, and I'm gonna hack the language here, but the Hebrew language, there's a word for the same word for hare or rabbit is arnabet, which seems to be a compound of aur, like for light, and nabat, to see light. And so it was used by the Egyptians to designate initiation, and among the Hebrews to see the light. And so it then transcends into other religious systems that we'll probably touch on a little bit throughout the night. That seeing light is a metaphor for initiation and or illumination into some sort of divine mystery school. So without any sort of order to this, who wants to chime in and kind of elaborate on that concept and then add to it with what you may have researched along the way? Or what do you feel that that concept of Masonic light means in today's context as well?
All right, so I had some thoughts about the concept of light, and to look at it from the eye of an artist, and as an artist, you become familiar with what light does in order to reveal things and the qualities that light have in different circumstances. So when we first talked about the concept of talking about the concept of light and its role in Freemasonry, I was thinking about the fact that in order for you to see things, if we go to the very basic function of how our eyes work, the way that we perceive things around us is by virtue of the light that bounces off of those things and reaches us afterwards. So if you think about it from that point of view, you have it's almost like an echo. You have a source of light that emanates and pretty much reveals things for you. I don't know if that comes across as I envision it. So you have this source of light, in this case, the creator, and he shines light upon the world, and this light being knowledge, being wisdom. And then we can see things through that wisdom. But in order for, we need to, our eyes need to perceive that wisdom or perceive that light that's bouncing off of things. So when I started looking at things in that way, it became very interesting to me. Almost we're walking in darkness unless we have the predisposition to observe or admire or ponder upon the things that surround us. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but I thought, I had that moment where I was thinking, damn, that kind of explains my whole existence, from how I perceive things around me. And, along those lines too, is sometimes we see things and we're not in the moment. We're not mindful of what we're seeing. It's almost like we take for granted the privilege it is for us to be able to see the things around us, and not everybody has that privilege. So let me see. Yeah, so that's pretty much the thoughts that I had on light and how it actually reveals the things around us.
Yeah, that's really fascinating when you think about the reflection, right? That we really don't perceive things as they are. We receive a reflection of light, and in fact, we get, that's why we see color, right? Because it absorbs all but the color that it's reflecting, and that's what we see in our eyes. And so even what we see as colors are illusions, because
it's our interpretation of.
Yes. And then you talk to someone who's colorblind, right? So they actually have a different interpretation of the same color.
Mm-hmm.
So they experience the world differently. And to pull the thread on that Masonically, as you were kind of alluding to, Juan, after we go through the process, the ritualistic process of initiation, has it been your experience? I know it's been mine, that you kind of see the world a little differently after contemplating the ritual that you went through, right?
Absolutely. And it's not, that is so true. And I have a very quick example right now of the harmony that comes from being able to see. For those of you who are listening to this, you might not know that I cannot see John. And you might have seen that I stepped over his words there for a second because I don't have any visual cues to go by, whether he's speaking, finishing his sentence, or like how he's acting. But it comes to no surprise to tie it to that, tie that to Masonry and the Masonic initiation experience. You are not giving any information that you didn't already know. Especially when you go through, you could summarize the entered apprentice degree, over some coffee by saying you need to be a good person, you need to manage your time correctly. If you have vices, get rid of them. If you have virtues, make them better. Be generous, charitable, and we're done. But none of that is new to me being initiated. What's new to me is how that relates to these images that I'll never forget. Even even while being hoodwinked, you are seeing, like, you're recreating in your mind what's happening, and you are, filling in the blanks and having an experience that you'll never forget, sounds and words and all this beauty that you don't forget, but it informs you saw before in a certain way. Now you'll see them in a different light, if you will.
And it looks like we have Mike Hambrecht here. Good evening, Mike. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Great. Glad to see you made it home safe.
Yes.
And so what, since I'm going to put you on the spot, what happens when you show up late to a meeting, at least where I work. what has been your thoughts and insights into this concept of Masonic light?
Masonic light. Well, knowledge has been the biggest one for me, but based on what I remember, we were kind of discussing with this about being able to see things. It also rounds to astronomy, which honestly is how we actually see the stars and so forth that we see. That's light, but it's as I jokingly put in our group chat, light is actually time travel into the past, because that light has left those stars many, many light years ago, or even from our own sun. We're talking, I believe it's between 3 and 5 minutes, something like that, time difference. So,
so even everything we see,
mhm.
every reflection of light that we see is actually even a microsecond in the past. That's wild.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah. But yeah, that's one of my biggest, we can look right into astronomy, and there's actually ways of using gravity that they use for, it's called gravitational lensing. They can actually see further into the past through astronomy, out into further distances, and pull in that light that way as well. So
Now, could I love that you mentioned astronomy being one of the sciences that we're encouraged to study and ponder upon. When you think of the tools that we utilize in order to admire, study the stars and all their composition and everything, it is a tool that controls the light in order for us to ascertain certain facts.
oh yeah.
And all that light is hitting you anyway. And if you think of Masonry, like the wisdom that we share with our brothers through the initiatic experience is not exclusive to Freemasonry. It's a universe, it's a collection of universal truths that inform the human soul to fulfill its purpose and for it to be that perfect ashlar in the building of society. But here Freemasonry acts as that telescope or microscope or binoculars. It's a tool that allows you to take light that was already around you. It was already reaching you, yet you were unaware of the complexity thereof because you didn't have those tools through which to admire it. I'm tripping. I should.
So I find the concept of light interesting from a philosophical lens, because it was Immanuel Kant who argued that we can only have knowledge of things we experience, at least directly, and it was John Locke who talked about the only things we experience directly are just ideas. The idea, of light within the bounds of Freemasonry, it opens the filters for perception. It paves the way for perception. Of course, there's aural hearing perception, but going into that lodge room and beholding your brethren, and of course needing light to do that. I see that as just another metaphor, visual metaphor for the initiatic experience. So I've always been the idea that you can't see anything without light, and so when you are a Mason, we keep say, when we sign off on the show, we say keep searching for more light, and that's and essentially that's keep thirsting for more knowledge, keep thirsting for more things that you can perceive, so that you can know more and more and more, to take something out of philosophy from Immanuel Kant.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you took the philosophical angle, because I'll kind of elaborate too. My research, probably even before the show was an idea here, was talking a lot about what is it that we keep searching for in Freemasonry. And if you consider, as I know a few of the panelists do here, that Freemasonry is a syncretic philosophical system of ancient mysteries that have been kind of pulled together. A lot of these mystery schools had the same ultimate goal of gnosis, in depending on if you follow kind of the Gnostic view, or Christian mysticism, or oneness, or at one-ment with the Creator. And so all of these different alignments of your soul to your Creator is really what that search is. That this Grail, in the quest for the Holy Grail, is actually in the metaphor of light. Right? We see light used in the Old Testament, the New Testament, and really pretty much every holy book that's out there. And it's really fascinating to look at it in the sense of divine light. We don't call it that in the ritual, but there's too many correlations that I find it to be a really good way to align. What is your spiritual quest for, and how it applies to what we're taught in the moral lessons of Freemasonry. And so another concept that builds on top of that is the concept of like inner light. The Hindus would say, like namaste, right, which is that the divine in me sees the divine in you, and it's really understanding that if we're all created in the image of the Creator, that we all have that divine spark or that divine light. And depending on which school of religion or mystery school that you adhere to, it's all about fanning that flame, fanning that flame inside of you, that light inside of you, to be a better person here, right, on Earth, so that you can not only just reach that ultimate goal at the end, but also be a good person while you're here. And as we talked about earlier about charity, which is also one of my hot buttons, right, it's really about unconditional love for other people. So that's the goal of what you should be doing right now, not waiting for this big lottery payoff at the end when you die. So so looking at it in terms of light, while we don't, in a secular organization that we have, we don't prescribe to any one religion through the tolerance and universal brotherhood that we have. It's left for each of us to uncover what is that divine light that each of us are seeking individually, so that we can be better people on Earth and better brothers to each other. It was a long-winded kind of way of thinking about it, but I think that's kind of how I kind of unpack this concept of light in the philosophical sense of the divine light that we're all striving for. Robert, I see you shaking your head. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you guys all really kind of hit it on the head. The way I tend to think about things, and I always have, really, is this idea that you take something that is, the spiritual and the scientific exist and are codependent on each other, right? And so we have something like the idea of light, as you guys have talked about it. I really agreed with what Jason said. And I guess in my own words, I would call light, as we look at it, is this, it's the oldest, it's your favorite symbol, right? It's the oldest symbol for the sun. It's the oldest symbol for God or deity. And looking back at our oldest religion, sun worship was really it. Even when we go into some of the first really involved religions that we have traces of, things like Zoroastrianism, the the amount of philosophy that's related to light in general is takes up so much of the dogmatic system. It's really brilliant. And then you can look at guys like I know almost everybody on this panel's probably read the guy's work, Jonathan Black, or I forget what is Jonathan Black his code name on his books, or whoever wrote The Secret History of the World, right? He talks about the third eye, the lamp, the idea that your pineal gland used to have some sort of a function that was literally outside the body and um, be able to be utilized in such a way that um, like photosensitivity really worked on it. So even today, I guess there's some sort of a test that they can run on a pineal gland where you can expose it to photo light or something like that, and it reacts. And the only way it would really ever do that is if it at some point in history was outside the body or something. I don't know. Maybe that's just philosophical. But what's interesting about that whole idea is this third eye, the third eye chakra, or whatever system, the crown chakra, whatever system is there. It's this idea of the sight, the seeing of the light. But going further than that is, philosophically, we look at it in Masonry. Light is this thing and this idea, but really, light is more, I think, along the lines of what Jason was talking about. It's this tool. The word light is just a word that we use to describe the method by which we absorb the knowledge that we're given. And like you guys alluded to, the ritual is not necessarily giving you anything that you didn't know. It's a confirmation of sorts. It gives validity to some of the feelings you may have already had. It solidifies some things that maybe you were on the fence about. It is supposed to awaken the sleeper to, the reality of existence. But we do this thing where it's a philosophy, and then we push it into, or it's like a reality, right? Like real deal light. This idea of real light, and then we move it into a philosophical sense. But now I talked about that science and spirituality as being codependent on each other. We're moving into an area in science today. And I think what's really interesting is almost like a theosophical revival, but it's academic. We're seeing the ideas of quantum physics today. They are giving us the clues to absolute reality through light waves and frequencies and vibrations. And it really leads into the basis of all things, this idea of string theory, quantum entanglement, and the elevation of man through quantum entanglement to the idea, an ancient idea of the Gnostic idea of a return to the pleroma or an apotheosis. So they're two different ideas, right? One is becoming godlike, and or God, and the other is becoming one with the Creator. But they're almost one and the same, really. And so when we look at these philosophical ideas, and we look at the science that's coming out today, and we look back now with fresh eyes that are clued in to the ideas of modern science, and we look back at what was said thousands of years ago in spiritual texts, I'll be David Hatcher's Childress here for a second and say, you've got to ask yourself, or you got to wonder why or how they did this. And it's really interesting, and it's so relevant today, especially when we look at modes of I say illumination, but modes of initiatory rites. Just that idea of receiving light. And then just to touch on this also, we mentioned at the top of the show, but I want to give a plug out there. I think Brother Jamie, who wrote Myth, Magic, Masonry, has a really good amount of information in his book regarding the solstices and basically the precession of planets and things. Because in the beginning, that's really what kind of started this conversation, was the idea of the solstices, and the movement of the sun. It's like it seems to be the first thing man set his eyes on scientifically was the precession. And we kind of took it from there. But give that kind of a calculation or give that request to anybody today and tell them to start tracking that stuff, and I bet they can't do it. It's pretty interesting. I digress.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
But go buy that book, Myth, Magic, Masonry. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. So
And come to Esotericon because Jamie's going to be here.
What? Oh, that's free plug for Jamie. Nice.
How about
that? Oh, you know what? Really quick, I wanted to mention this too, touching on what Juan had said about art and then seeing, right? So for a number of years, I was a professional wedding photographer, and on occasion, I would get some kind of hipster folks who really wanted me to shoot their wedding in infrared or whatever. And if you've ever played with infrared film, not digital, but film, infrared film, it's really kind of an interesting beast, right? Because we talk about the idea of like seeing you, and I can reach out and I can touch you, and I know right where your face is because I live in this spectrum of light, right? But in the infrared spectrum, you're like half a foot closer to me, actually. So when you shoot with infrared, you have to dial your camera back just a little bit and focus it a little bit different. And you'll notice on older cameras, there's a little red dot. So you put it in focus, and then you move the red dot to the spot where it's going to be. And now the infrared image is in focus, which you can't see. So then when you develop your pictures, they're actually in focus because your infrared image is closer. And then it makes me like wonder, if we lived in the infrared spectrum, could I reach out and am I like, if I reach out right now, am I touching my computer already in the infrared world, or how does this stuff work? It's all kind of reality based.
Well, it depends on yes, in some way, shape, or form, you're making contact with those thermal emanations.
Yeah. And then that makes me think, it takes us back. It's a philosophical idea that's become kind of like this ineffable idea of it's all subjective, right? But it's all subjective reality. And it's fascinating to me to think about those things.
Well, then now you've just taken the conversation to a whole nother level. If you look at the entire electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I guess that's kind of where I'm going, right? Like we talk about ineffable, God, ineffable, the mystery of life, right? But we can't possibly know anything because we're in this thing that is only coded to see through one lens.
Right, a very small wavelength, right? That we actually can visually see.
Well, very, very small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We can't see super small wavelengths.
What you're saying is that we are in constant contact with everything that surrounds us. If we are to see things in that sense, like what you talked about, infrared, which is just a little nudge under the visual spectrum. But if you continue to expand, that catalog of wavelengths, then that focal point that you just had to adjust for infrared, that focal point continues to expand, and it's all encompassing then.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the radiation.
Yeah. And so what's interesting about that, right? I talked about that idea of quantum entanglement. For the guys out there who don't know or don't follow physics or don't nerd out, like some of us do, the idea of quantum entanglement essentially shows that, we're all the same age. Everything, all matter's the same age. You're only in your present form for however old you are. So I'm 37 years old. So the matter that comprises me is the same age as the matter that comprises this pen and everything in existence. Only I've been in this form for 37 years with this amount of consciousness. And what's interesting about that is because of that,
matter is neither nor destroyed.
Right. Yeah. Thermodynamics, law number 1. Yep. Right. So it's that is the oneness. Like truly, everything is one. And that's just like, that's not even
Like me?
it's yeah, we are all one. It literally there is, it's like it's a philosophy that we've proven. You know, Neil deGrasse Tyson always talks about the receding pocket, right? Like everything mysterious goes in God's pocket, or like in the pocket, right? And as we can explain the mysteries that come out of it, like this idea of like ineffable God becomes a shrinking pocket because we're explaining the mysteries as we go along. And like oneness is considered a thread that's been pulled, and that's done. We've proven that. It's really interesting. And I'm not saying there's no creator. I believe in a creator, absolutely. I just find the argument fascinating.
Elaborate a bit on what you mean by this concept of oneness has been proven.
So it's proven, like we're all one because of the Big Bang.
Of matter, right? Okay.
Matter, we are all of the same matter. And the quantum entanglement shows, like, you know, you can, so two elements that are created at the same time, separated by thousands of miles, now you can destroy one and the other one is destroyed also, and they're not touching or any way linked. It's the entanglement that they're talking about.
Right.
So if you're Googling, just type in, you know, spooky physics, Einstein or whatever, and you'll come across hundreds of articles, thousands really. But that's the idea, right? Like that's proven oneness.
Yeah.
You can look in the Zohar. The Zohar describes the Big Bang, and it calls it the hard spark. And like, again,
yeah, written hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, like how do you know that? You know, it's like the Dogon tribes, right? How'd they know about Sirius and the twin stars?
Now, one last concept I wanted to ping the rest of the panel on, which I know many of you have read, is the concept of Plato's Allegory of the Cave, in the sense of how light is used as a metaphor, again, for knowledge, but in a context of those who can see, and those who can't or are not willing to see can be impacted by that. And since Juan is a big fan of Plato's Allegory of the Cave, I'm going to let him summarize what that concept is for those who haven't checked it out yet. So Juan, what is Plato's Allegory of the Cave?
Well, in the Allegory of a Cave, you have individuals they're inside of the cave looking at the cave walls, and what they are privileged to see is only the shadows, or I would say the shadows and the silhouettes formed by somebody who is outside of the cave, in between them and the source of light. And you have various degrees of development in the individual, and among those you have those who become curious as to what is creating, what's creating this. Some of them are in the spectrum where to them that is reality. Like all they've ever seen is what's on the cave wall. And then you have others who start developing a curiosity as to, why is this the reality that I see? What is creating this? And then they start trying to figure it out. Eventually, some more evolved or adventurous individuals within that group decide to go outside, or decide to start actually trying to find what is causing these silhouettes, and this, what they thought was reality, it's only the reflection of something else that lives outside. Now, the trouble is that, let's say that individual goes out and actually gets to see the real world, gets to see color, gets to experience life in that more encompassing way, in that free way of experiencing reality and understanding reality. His attempt to come back into the cave and convey the complexity and the infinite nature of what's outside of the cave, it's simply incomprehensible to some of these other individuals that are within the cave. And boy, do we see this everywhere. especially when it comes to studying life, studying what our purpose is, trying to study how to interact with one another. And some people live a life that is, to them, that's their reality. It's a very simple, very complacent way of living, as opposed to someone who has the desire to acquire more information and free themselves from a preconceived notion. They're open to receive new light. I don't know. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm halfway. Huh?
So that last part always kind of like it gave me pause, because that there not only will the people who are still chained in the cave not accept what someone who's been outside and saw the light is trying to convey this new knowledge to them. Not only will they not accept it, they will actively reject it.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that they will go out of their way to violently reject that. No, this is your reality is crazy. You're a crazy person. These shadows on this cave wall is reality.
Look at them; they're right here.
We see that in social media.
Well, it's everywhere if you think about it, because it's in social media. It's in our perception of. Well, I mean, just even for us Masons, right? We have a different perspective of the world if we really take a lot of the rituals to heart. And then it's really hard to explain to someone who's not been through that, right? That's part of the mystic tie.
Yeah.
That I can travel anywhere in the world, meet a brother, and we have this bond that's, hey, we've gone through a process we have now been outside, we've been freed from these chains of the cave. We have a different perspective. You and I can now resonate at a different wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
and talk to each other. And so while Plato used that metaphor or that allegory of the cave as a way to demonstrate what knowledge is, and for those who are willing or unwilling to accept it, that applies to many other philosophic degrees and orders as well. And so and it uses the central theme of what is light, what is reflection of light on the cave walls, and what is the ultimate source of light, and how is that you carried through to the players in that drama.
Now, I think it's important that we make a point to reveal almost the state of mind of those who are still chained and within the cave. For them, that's reality, and they're not willing to accept anything else.
And it's okay. They're complacent. They're happy. They accept reality as it is.
They are. Now, the dangerous part is that if this applies to many aspects of your life, you may feel that you've gone out and explored, but it's almost like maybe you're at the you just wander to the entrance of the cave, and there are other people who've wandered beyond the hills, and they've wandered beyond the ocean, and they've wandered much further, and they have something to offer to you, and you could be playing the same role as one who is chained in the innermost chamber of the cave by rejecting their experience or invalidating their opinion. So I bring this up because it should be to all of us who are in this perpetual search for light, that we don't fall prey to the same behavior from which we freed ourselves at one point, and for a second feel that we know everything or that we've found all the secrets. I've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of just like being really stubborn and absolutely rejecting another person's experience or opinion of the world just because I feel that I've come out of that cave. But it's important, it's healthy in our pursuit of more light to every now and then look at our gut reaction to someone's at that moment when someone shares something important with us. Don't discredit it initially. Don't shut it down instantly and aggressively. give it, give it some room, give that story enough time to be, for the story to have an arc. And unfortunately, we all are guilty of it.
Right.
But the more aware we are of our reactions, the more in tune we are with how we are reacting to things, it has to be, it's going to be a good thing if we have that introspection periodically.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd add to that too is you can be free of one cave and yet still chained in another.
Yes.
That just because you may have a different perspective that's against the societal norm, there are other societal norms that you may have that you're still shackled to. And as long as you are aware and you can hold both, just make sure that you're not trying to feel like you're superior to anyone else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's a illustration of that most people are going to identify with, I think, hear me out. How many of you have looked at a photo album and looked at a younger version of yourself and chuckled at the fact that you recognize that at that moment you thought you knew a lot? Right? It's like I look at, yeah, exactly. That was your reality at the moment. I recently remember when this must have been 2001, maybe. I was starting a business and I had gone through the motions of, filing, incorporating, getting a whole, like, this thing was ready to go. And I remembered recently that I actually met with an older man who was the owner of a big business in town, to present him my idea and convince him of how we should be partners in this new venture and everything. And I remember realizing, oh my God, I must have made a fool out of myself in this man's mind, because I thought I had it all nailed down and everything. But like, knowing what I know now, and realizing how little I knew at that time about marketing and business and all of that, I thought, oh my God, like, I really thought I knew stuff. And I'm sure that I'll look back at these videos and when I'm 60 and chuckle at that too.
That's true. All right, Ham, were you going to say something?
Yeah, back to the cave allegory too. I was thinking, it's also about being prepared to come out, because if you've been in darkness like that for any length of time, your eyes adjust to that darkness, so you can now see better in the darkness. But when you come out into too much, if you come out into too much light, you get out there and you're blinded. If you take too much in at one time or don't give yourself time to adjust. So it's a preparation movement, kind of like we are, you have to be prepared and ready when we actually get initiated into Masonry as it is. Many of us may have, like myself, have thought about it for many years, actually, before I actually even petitioned the lodge. So I wasn't prepared early on, and I was prepared when I did, is what the best. And can we even really be totally prepared? No, but there is that, like I say, going out of the cave like that into the light, you could actually hit out there and just find yourself in pain and turning around and going back in and not actually, there's going to be those that turn around and don't accept the light.
Well, it's a great point to end on, Mike. Thank you for adding that icing on the cake, as it were. So let's start wrapping things up for shameless plugs and final thoughts, and we'll go back around to Robert Johnson to take us home. Robert.
So I think this is one of the best episodes we've done in terms of conversations that have been happening on the sidebar there on YouTube. Tremendous effort on so many people helping everybody else contemplate the meaning of what we're talking about. It was interesting topic to hit on because it's so huge in spectrum and is largely um, subjective. I mean, everything is subjective, even if you say it's objective. But in this particular area, where usually we have some sort of a tool or an idea within Masonry that we can point to and say, well, this is the solid piece here. This is the main meat of the argument. While we have a little bit of that, the idea is largely subjective, and I think that like we gain a lot from hearing each other's ideas and reading. Um, I have to kind of humble brag a little bit because uh, Gary Meisner in the chat is a really great friend of mine, and you should all be jealous because I get to sit and lodge with him every month. So just throwing that out there. But just want to say thanks for everybody watching and listening, and I hope you guys are all enjoying the show, and want to thank everybody out there helping us out on that Patreon. We're coming up with the content as John and Jason have alluded to. But yeah, thanks so much. And if you like Masonic podcasts, check out Whence Came You, but not the last 2 weeks of this year. I think this week will be our last show, or maybe, I don't know. I got two weeks at the end of the year I'm off. So if not, we'll continue to bombard you with other things. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Mike the intern. Off to you.
Okay. Yeah, this some of this actually, to some extent, sometimes feels like it goes right up over my head. By the way, though, RJ, I'm jealous, but not as jealous as I would be if I had never gotten to sit and lodge with Gary before. So,
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's a community bicycle joke in there somewhere, but
but anyway, no, it's like I said, when I started with this stuff here with the astronomy and so forth, that's one of my big hobbies. So, man, I totally get how the light works that way, and how, that it's about focus on that. When it comes down to that, it's, the tools that we can focus in on to gain more knowledge and light, as it were. So anyway, thank you very much, and good night.
great. All right, Juan, off to you.
I'm still tripping with the whole comment that Mike made about astronomy, because I'm thinking, yeah, I have a telescope, but there are other people out there who have telescopes that are way more advanced than the one that I have in my garage. And some people have access to great telescopes, and they might not have all the knowledge required to interpret what they see through that telescope. So you have this vast variety of people, tools, and wisdom used in all kinds of combinations, and none of them are the same. They're all unique. And just like we had a brother, one of the live viewers here was mentioning that. I mean, I wish I could see the comment right now. But anyway, he was mentioning that, like, everybody is. Oh, it was Carl Jung, and he was mentioning that every person is superior to you in one aspect of life. You can learn from every single individual that you come in contact with if you allow yourself to absorb something from them. And many times we get preoccupied by how we're looking, how we're sounding, what we are contributing to the situation, and don't necessarily take the time to absorb what this one individual can really contribute to your life with their knowledge, their experience, and all that. So, if you take anything from today's conversation, which I think there's a lot in here, so this is one of those that is worth going through over again. If you take one thing, it is that light comes in an infinity of wavelength, and if you open your eyes and attune your instruments to acquire it, you're the better for it. And everyone who surrounds you can help you, fill in each one of those colors. So I hope that, at least one person that listens to this can live life in that manner. So thank you very much for everyone who's watching. We've had a great representation of people watching live. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our channel. We are almost at 10,000 members, and we don't. This is something that, of course, it's a number to some, but it helps us reach more brothers. There might be other brothers out there who are not getting any of these videos that we're getting because the algorithm of YouTube is a mystery. We have no light that shines on it. But if you like what we do, that's one of the simplest things you can do. Click on subscribe, and anytime we come with new content, you'll get it first. You'll get some notifications, and tell another brother. Let someone know who, pick a brother who you suspect doesn't listen to podcasts or doesn't watch YouTube videos, and get that brother to listen. Maybe that 88-year-old brother, that brother that got a 50-year pin last week, get him onto the show, see if he can help us find more light as well. Thank you, brothers. You can find me at thewindingstairs.com. I'll see you there.
Sweet. Jason Richards.
All right, bringing it home. Really good episode. This is, I think, this is one of our more abstract episodes, and I wasn't sure which way we were going to go, but I was really entranced with the discussion on the cave, and just love how we took it from philosophy to practical applications to metaphysical to back around to philosophy. It was just a really good show. So thanks so much for everybody watching. Go ahead and subscribe, like Juan said. Check out our Patreon. We've got some cool stuff that we're doing for the Patreon, to include an exclusive TMR Patreon subscribers pin for those who make the Squire or Knight rank on Patreon. So if you're interested in what that pin looks like, go ahead and join as one of those levels, and you'll get to see a prototype design of it. So they're still working out what the final design will be, but that'll give you a good idea as to what it's going to be. Thanks so much for watching. We're looking forward to coming back to talk with y'all again next week. And with that, John, I'll hand it back over to you.
Yay. This is really good. I think you guys hit the nail on the head that when we have these discussions, one of the little secrets of the show is, while we do plan and put some concepts together, most of our planning is done individually and is kind of bulleted together. And so it's really what our individual research leads us to, and the conversations that come together is what really shines. And so I want to thank you, brothers on the panel here, as well as all of those in the YouTube chat, who are sharing different perspectives. And it's really, I think that's really where the secret sauce is for not only TMR, but for the fraternity as a whole, is the exchange of ideas and becoming a better person because of that. Also related to that, is there's a quote that I'm going to misattribute to, but basically it says that the true sign of genius is being able to hold competing ideas, sometimes even diametrically opposed ideas, and not be swayed to accept one or both of them. And so you may not have to agree with everything, but the fact that we can apply the liberal art of rhetoric and discuss and have different ideas and thoughts and be better enabled because of that is really what this show and what Masonic education is truly about. So this has been great. I learned a lot, and let's see you next week. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.